APLGNTers, those of us who like our spirituality with a twist. So we're doing a special episode with one of our friends of the show, Rory, right? It's the first time actually Rory and I get a chance to talk, and we're going to talk all kinds of cool traditional Chinese medicine stuff, especially as Rory's building towards what should be a really awesome book, right? On Daoist ideas and TCM ideas. And we're going to focus in on this particular episode in a really deep Chinese medical idea. I'm laughing because it's so deep. So this is gonna go deep, y'all. And it's really about this idea of imperial fire and ministerial fire, and we get to learn all about what that is together, as Rory's going to share with us. And Daniel and I will be, yeah, I don't know what you would even call it. We'll be
Passengers.
chatting. We'll be chatting. We'll be chatting about this as we kind of hear the ideas. I'm hyped to hear it, though. Thanks so much, Rory, for doing it.
Yeah, yeah, my pleasure. Looking forward to chopping it up. Great to spend some time with you, Eric. We've had some fun, Daniel.
Hmm.
So yeah, like you said, I'm writing towards this book on Daoist cosmology and numerology, and the tentative title is "The Hidden Heart of Chinese Medicine." So it's almost like the fundamental geometric underpinnings that all of not just Chinese medicine, but the Taoist arts, feng shui, divinations, tai chi, all of that really emerges from these deeper understandings. In the classics, it says, the ancient sages knew the way of life. They followed the perfect numbers or the perfect numerics, which are the great principles of human life. So it's not just about medicine. It's almost like the source code of reality in a certain sense. And so what's really so fascinating about it, I have a background in mathematics. I did chaos theory
Oh, cool.
research. Yeah. So I was in a fellowship with the NSF back in the day. And so in chaos theory, it's a relatively new branch of mathematics because it emerged with the introduction of computational power and graphical representation of iterative functions, basically repeating simple functions over and over, and then you can get the concept of fractals.
Yeah.
And what a fractal is a repeating pattern at different scales. And
Like a
so
mandala too, if you get to that idea, right? With
Yeah.
different
exactly,
different
exactly. And so the whole reason that they teach in the Doan clan that we study medicine is because we're studying this small pattern. So we're studying the near so we can know the far, the small so we can know the large. And so by really understanding this small unit, we can know the nature of nature.
It's not that small of a unit, though, Rory. It's, I would say, average size.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. um, but so, you know, so they talk about these, perfect numbers, perfect numerics, and it's really a pretty nebulous idea. So to give a kind of sense of it, they're really these Taoist relational geometric laws. You could think of them. So if I talk about like pi, for instance, you shouldn't think about pi, not PIE, PI. You should think about it not as the sequence of digits like 3.14, but as the relational law between the area and radius of a circle. And so that law holds at all scales and
Hmm.
emerges throughout nature. Or you could say the same of phi as the, in relation to the golden spiral. So the growth pattern of that, or E, or, you know, all of these things. So in this sense, we have these perfect numbers, and the ones that I'm going to get to are 5 and 6, and those correspond to heaven and earth. And so in the Taoist classics, this is an idea that's really, you see it put forth by Plato. We have the Platonic world of ideals versus the tangible reality, and that's outlined in the whole allegory of the cave in
This
Plato's
is just a
Republic.
total side note in terms of synchronicity, but my son had to do a thing for the school where he had to like act out some historical personage, and I was helping him write a dialogue this week, and the person was, drumroll, Plato.
Mm.
So we were writing,
Awesome. Right
literally
on
just writing
time.
with my son like 2 days ago, like a speech on the allegory of the cave, so he could tell it to a bunch of fourth graders,
Yeah, yeah. So
or
you
even
know
sixth grade.
exactly
Talking to
you're
kids.
well prepped for this.
Yeah, yeah, it's nice synchronicity. I mean, that like means that the Tao is doing its thing.
Exactly. And so it's the same concept of maybe you can explain Plato's cave. Yeah, it's this basically the world that we perceive is is one dimension and there's higher dimensions beyond it, but you have to experience them in order to really believe it. You got to see it to believe it.
That's like you have to see 3 dimensions to realize you can get it out of two or something, right? Because in the Plato's cave, you're
Exactly.
just seeing the shadows on the wall, so you're living kind of in a two-dimensional world. I
Mm.
didn't put that in the speech for my kid
Yeah.
to explain two-dimensional to three-dimensional, but the effect is I mean, like from a Taoist point of view or something, you're living in something that's kind of illusory until you're able to break through and see the higher dimensionality, right?
Mhm.
So you're
Mhm.
living in a confined sort of state of consciousness until you can expand it out, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And so in the classics it talks about earth is the carrier of physical objects while heaven is displaying the pure energy of chi. And
Mhm.
so it's talking about this dichotomy of pure energy versus physical form. It's almost like when you look at a wave coming at you on the shoreline, the water's not coming to you. The wave is traveling towards you. You can scoop up some water and hold it, but you can't hold the wave.
Mhm.
And so it's this tangible reality as opposed to this intangible reality. And so there's a lot of, I
So
think,
in
things.
the real quick in the metaphor, the wave is more like the heavenly form thing that's coming through, and the water is the more earthy, substantive thing that's
The
the
way,
carrier of the heavenly form, or so. Is that kind of the way you're thinking of it too?
yeah. So the
Okay.
wave is the pure energy,
Hmm.
and the water is the physical form.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Got it. Hmm. Yeah.
And so, uh, and then in the classics, it also there's I don't think we have the time to really go into the why it's 5 and 6, but um, maybe we can a little bit. We'll see. We'll see what you guys can stop me. But um,
I mean, do it now.
so
This is before you move
yeah,
on. Yeah.
okay. So heaven is round and earth is square. That appears a lot. You can see the Chinese coins with the square in the center. And so, and if you look at like I
And
forget the name.
Rory, just so people, for people who are not familiar, the Chinese coins basically look like a penny, which is round, right? It's a flat disc, but then they have a square hole punched directly through the center. And so
Mhm,
this is a physical representation of heaven as being round and then earth as being square.
And the
mhm,
real famous like yin and yang, if you want to use those words too, right?
Hmm.
mhm, mhm,
People also back be familiar with. There was like
mhm,
kind of a funny thing in culture, Chinese culture, because there was a pragmatic element. You could like put all those things on a string, right, and carry them around, right? But then there's the philosophy buried inside of that, right? Which is
mhm,
those traditional cultures, right? Like
mhm,
Chinese
mhm.
culture, right? There's the meaning behind there too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because they could have punched a hole in a circle because they could obviously make a circular press. They just chose not to.
Mhm.
Philosophy, right?
Let's hope.
Yeah, I think that's true. That's the philosophical point, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
So,
I
anyways,
certainly
Rory, you were
make
saying.
that case to students too, but yeah, okay. So yeah, sorry, Rory. Yeah, that's interesting.
Uh, yeah, yeah. So it's basically what they're talking about is basically you have this top-down mechanism of consciousness, and we've talked about the Wei Chi field being like a torus, being this torus topology, and the Chong Mai being that eye of the storm, so to speak.
And again, just for people, who are most people, literally 80% of people who watch this have never seen a previous episode. So,
Okay.
um, when Rory's talking about this like Wei Chi field, he's talking about kind of like your aura in general, like a spherical energetic presence around you, which, we've talked about before in previous episodes. But if you've never been in a previous episode before, this is the the electromagnetic field that surrounds you. Okay, so like an egg, we could say, or a sphere around you, like a big ball. And then in the center of your body is like the eye of the storm, like the center of a tornado. There's a tube that runs from the top all the way down. And that tube gets called different names in different systems, but he's calling it here the Chongmai, which is the centralized vessel in the very center of the body. But you can call it, the Kundalini vessel or Shishamna, however you want to call it. But it splits this tube right down the center, and that's this kind of access point that Rory's talking about right now.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and unpack that a little bit more if if it really is 80% of
Yes, it
the
is.
audience.
I have
So,
all the data.
all right. Um, so if you think about like the yin yang symbol, I think most people are pretty familiar with that. So
Yeah.
it's the Tai Chi diagram, and it's depicting yin and yang. What the Dohan teach is that this yin and yang vortex, the Tai Chi, is a two-dimensional representation that's been handed down on two-dimensional sheets of paper, two-dimensional temple walls, canvases, but it's actually referencing a higher dimensional reality. And so they call it a vortex when they translate it. A vortex which takes the subtler dimensions of consciousness and translates them into form. And that exact topology, when you look at it, what they teach is that it's often described as a white fish with a black eye and a black fish with a white eye. But they teach that the two eyes are actually, in fact, one column, one empty space. And so when you're looking through the white side, you are seeing the black side from through the empty column. And from the black side, you see the white through the empty column. So these aren't two separate dots. They're one central core or central pivot where it spirals around.
And, and Roy, before you move on, just for a little bit of, I guess, frame of reference, because what you said, there's a lot of things that are very profound, right? First one, so you're talking about a three-dimensional object being represented in a two-dimensional plane. So a sphere being represented on a wall would look like a circle, just like a cube represented on a piece of paper would look like a square. So this is what you're talking about on the yin yang symbol, or as many people say it, the yin yang symbol, that the kind of black eye, white eye, it's the same eye. It's the hole, or it's the central channel through the middle of the sphere being represented on a piece of paper. And so it goes into kind of like this idea of the holographic nature of reality, and that you have to see beyond what it is that we're seeing in a two-dimensional representation, is that they are an analogy for something that lies beyond the obvious, which is a term that I love to use on a regular basis. But so I'm just giving a little bit of context so that we keep the attention of the geniuses who are watching. You know what I'm saying? And I don't say that sarcastically. If you're hanging with us and you like this, your cognition is in the top 10%, would be my guess. Maybe even the top 5 or top 1, but however you like it. It's good to compliment your audience, even if you don't know them.
So the idea of looking through the tube, from the white side you see the black, and from the black that you see the white, right? Is that being represented like as a tube within the space? I'm just getting in like the geometry of it. I want to just make sure I'm seeing it correct.
So it would be like a donut or like a bagel.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so that's really what a torus is that, and you can elongate that spherical kind of shape,
Mhm.
and then the tube is really like a hurricane. You could think of that spiral, or like a tornado.
Okay.
Yeah, and really it's like a magnetic field too. So much of our modern physics is, I haven't gotten to this point yet, but it's in mathematics, this topology is called a torus. So the role of a torus in mathematics is that it acts as a matrix of transformation. It is literally a bridge from higher dimensions to lower dimensions. So you can use it as a projective map in order to take, higher dimensional matrices information and project it down, even on like this like two-dimensional screens like we're talking on now. You could use like a stereographic projection, and you can make rotations on 3 dimensions simultaneously and render it in 2 dimensions. But what's fascinating about that, like a magnetic field too, is that all of reality manifests in this duality of two poles because of this structure. And so in the case of Earth, what of our microcosm of the human unit, and that's what we should always do when we're studying these Taoist principles, is constantly refer back to the microcosm of our own body. And so when we talk about yin and yang of this torus or this microcosm, we're talking about heaven and earth, which is our pure consciousness into our physical form. And so, and we can translate it. It sounds really esoteric, but in modern physics, it's established science that we have this wave particle duality. That reality is in this state of waves, pure energy, until it's observed, until a measurement is made, and then it becomes particles. So, it was like Niels Bohr who made his family crest the Tai Chi symbol and wrote on it "Contraria sunt complementa," opposites are complementary. And so he said, everything that we consider to be real is made of things which can't be considered to be real. And so it's
I
but
think you
I
said it earlier, but like for me back in the day, we're meeting each other for the first time.
Mhm.
But back in the day, like I got really interested in nonlinear dynamics too and chaos theory back when I was, and that's like just part of the fascination I also had with like quantum mechanics. So I was like a physics major at U of C like back in the day.
Awesome.
So there's like that's
Awesome.
floating around for me here. So when I'm listening to it, I'm like, yes, okay. And so you're kind of talking about like what they sometimes call like complementarity, right?
Mhm.
This idea
Mhm.
that and Niels Bohr really wrestled with that, right? What to
Mhm.
do with
Yeah.
that whole thing, and this idea that there's like multiple levels of reality then in his way of thinking about this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And like
absolutely.
there's a part that like in an uncertainty principle, you can't know something about it, and but like then you see the gross level reality that sort of emerges out of this other thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
I'm going to butcher this, but he had some other quote like, at last we've reached a paradox. Now we have hope of making progress.
This is also the really famous thing for people who might love a little the physics of it. This is where he and Einstein were arguing, and Einstein said, God does not play dice with the universe, the really famous Einstein quote.
Don't tell
But
God.
yeah, the Bohr quote, people don't know back. It's like Einstein stop telling God how to run his universe, which is
Yeah.
the retort, which is really funny, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Or
when
the
you're talking
yeah.
about consciousness, pure consciousness, would you use the word Shen for that in a Chinese medical context? And would you use the word Jing for that too? Are those comfortable words for you with how you're trying to talk about
You
that?
could that would actually step down a little bit into so that would zoom into a little bit of we'd have to go into it would be zoomed into the microcosm a little bit more. So we would actually get into when you have so if I talked about pure consciousness and form, I would say heaven and earth. And then when you have two poles, there's a clearly established center. So that would be like our middle dantian. And because of like its geometric structure, the Doan teach that the level of the heart or emotion is like the midway point between form and pure consciousness. And that's why it has such torque and importance over our human experience. And then once you have a center, then between like this pure consciousness and the middle dantian, their middle meeting point between above and below creates the two other dantians. So you have this, more spiritual but subtly coming down, and then emotion, and then the lower dantian is more like physical vitality and jing. And so I would call this more shen, and then Jing below in the lower Dantian. So
Yeah,
upper and lower Dantian.
this Dantian means like elixir field. It's kind of like almost like a chemical imagery from the Taoists, right? And you end up with like
Yeah.
kind of framing the body as having these sort of three levels, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
it's like a chakra if you want to call it that.
yeah, that's a
Hmm.
lot like a chakra theory, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's total. It's a
So,
total analog for our clan.
so when you hear the word Shen in that context, are you like putting the Shen like into the heart? Is that how you're thinking about that with that word? Or because you're going up here, sometimes people will say like Yuan Shen for that, the original Shen up over here in the brain more. I'm just trying to like, yeah.
Yeah. Shen.
Obviously that word doesn't work for you, so I was just curious. You're like it's not kind of capturing it. So, but that I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
we're all TCM people. So people, it's a funny thing. I was thinking about this. You ask a TCM, you ask three TCM people for a perspective, you'll probably get four opinions because there'll be something
Yeah.
else. You know, so
Yeah.
it's always interesting to hear how people are thinking about things. Yeah.
Well, the honest answer is I'm not thinking about Shen in terms of
Okay.
that
Okay.
much.
Okay. Cool.
Um, but if I have to, I would say like closer to that, and I'll move into. So you'll see, like the way I'm thinking about this is quite different from like
Okay. Okay. Cool.
traditional TCM terms. Um, so let's get to the numerics. So
Yeah,
this
I was
is
just gonna say
a
5 and 6.
long 5 and 6. So heaven is round and earth is square. Man's head is round and his feet are square. And really, what that's talking about is this geometry of this when it talks about these pure conscious dimensions. And there's even this lecture that I saw was given at Harvard on the hyperbolic geometry of dimethyltryptamine experiences. And so, what it's really referencing is these transcendent states where your consciousness rises above your physical form, and the geometry of that experience is all it's pure energy, but it's also displayed in a non-Euclidean space. So like the interior angles of triangles may not add up to 180. Parallel lines may in fact converge or diverge, and so on and so forth. And so
Okay.
it's
This
also like,
so
yeah,
deep because we're talking about geometry that's like not on a flat plane. If people haven't heard of Euclidean geometry, right? It's like
yeah,
a Riemann thing, right? Where you're going to bend the planes that the things are on, right?
yeah, yeah.
When I have to talk with students about it, I got like a globe sitting over here on my son's desk. You can hold it, right? It could
Mhm.
be parallel at the equator when you look at those like longitudinal lines, but that's going to meet at the poles. So it's a different way of even thinking about geometry on cold on curved space, right? Normally, if you
Mhm.
go to thing like parallel lines never meet, that's what we were taught back in grade school, right? But
Yeah,
you put that
yeah,
on a curve, and then they'll meet someplace else because it's curving. Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. 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 So I'm following along.
That's a
Okay.
good
Cool.
Eric.
So
That's a good point.
yeah. And so this is something that's just like a quick line in the classics. You also see it in like the I forget that temple that the emperor used to go to every year. I think it was on the new year, but it has it's constructed in the same round above, square below. Um, and so when we talk about round, it's measured in six. So we do yin and yang of each. So we have these yin and yang at each level. And so 6 times 2 gives us 12 yin and yang. 5 times 2 gives us 10. And so we talk about in this lineage, this gets into stems and branches and all that, but 12, Dosonal, is better fit for time sequences. So we're talking about, and time, that's really what that energy is like it's time. It's talking about rhythms and sequences and events unfold in this chi.
Like seasons.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the 10 base 10 decimal is better suited for like uh, you know the metric system of weight and distance and all that.
Mm.
And so since we have, I'm going to give another, this isn't like Dohan. I'm trying to make a habit out of making distinctions between, mathematical parallels that are speculative versus Dohan theory for while I'm writing this. But so, as a curious analogy, the number of platonic solids. So a platonic solid is a regular closed polytope. Polytope is you know formalized for any dimension. So it's all the sides are the same. It's closed, and if you draw a line from any 2 points on the surface, the line segment connecting them will be contained within the shape.
So a cube.
Yeah, cube is a platonic solid, tetrahedron, um,
Just a cube's good.
octagon.
Well, that's fine. We
Yeah,
got a cube. All right.
but there's five. So we have five elements
Mhm.
that correspond to the Earth carrier of physical objects. And there are, guess how many there are in four-dimensional space?
6.
Exactly. There's six regular polytopes in four-dimensional space. Guess any dimension above that.
5.
Three.
Oh,
Three.
oh man.
Isn't that interesting?
Cool. Okay.
That
Yeah.
what was that thing that you sent me, Rory? That video?
That was on bot periodicity. So
Right, but
that's a
that
lot. That's way beyond the scope of
no, no, I
today.
know, but that periodicity eventually comes into play after the first couple layers, right?
Yeah. So basically, what bot periodicity is saying is that there's certain symmetries, there's rules of symmetries, periodicities of symmetries that occur every 0 to 7 dimensions. And so, and we have that same, we talk about the Dantians and then we have the middle burner and Tian 2, and that gives us 7 dimensional levels of consciousness. Each of these are different levels that are kind of communicating with each other. And those communications, that's why in the Dohan we have 6 bars for the hexagrams. If I had 7 islands, I would need 6 bridges. And then we talk about these permutations of those hexagrams based on the torus flow. But bot periodicity is, and also in the Doan, whenever you go to another plane of reality, so if you just rip out of your crown and you meet like multidimensional beings, maybe you did some 5-MeO DMT, you will also see that they have seven, like 7 chakras, just like blinding you in that space too, as many times as you go up. So it repeats. And so it's just, that was something I was also, that's also speculative, but it's very interesting that in mathematics, we have this periodicity of 7 dimensions. But anyway, getting back to 10 and 12. So this is all just laying the groundwork for the imperial and ministerial fires. So let's, for instance, we have 6 chi in heaven, and the 6 atmospheric influences, and we have 5 elements on Earth, 5 3-dimensional objects. And so, in the same way that there's 6 polytopes, there's 5 3-dimensional analogs below them. So in this way, we consider the 6 chi like the 5 elements are a subspace of so it's like 3-dimensional space within the 4D space, like we can call for the fourth dimension time. And so in the same way that like the symmetries of the 6 tree is what creates the 5 elements, like if you look at your wrist, you have Taiyang, cold and heat make a pair on the yin and yang side, dry and damp, and wind and fire. These oppositional forces are what creates this physical form. And so, our body is like our subconscious mind, you could talk about, that kind of accommodates our mental style, you could say, in a way. And so, all right, so we have, in the same way that we have 6 polytopes in 4D space, we have 5 analogs. So there's one missing. And so, and this goes through in the classics, it talks about on Earth we have Earth, on Earth we have Earth, in heaven we have damp, on Earth we have wind, in heaven we have, but there's 2 fires. So it's really curious that we have 2 fires on Earth. And so it's this dimensional gap
Mhm. Okay.
between heaven and earth that creates these two fires, and that's the imperial and ministerial fires, is what we call them. And so the ministerial fire is what we call Shaoyang Qi. That's animated by Shaoyang Qi. And the imperial fire is what we call Shaoyin Qi, which starts on the bottom of the foot where we contact the ground with kidney one, yang chuan. And so when we talk about these dimensionally different fires, when we zoom back in again to the microcosm, there's a huge difference between this Shaoyin objective heat versus Shaoyang subjective heat. Like if you get hot with rage, so like you get really angry, the anger transfers to the gallbladder pair through converts to Shaoyang Qi. You have this sense of being hot with rage. The Shaoyin Qi is like it's basically like chemical Krebs style heat, which you can measure. So it's this is what the Dohan teach. So caloric energy and neuron energy are two completely different things. So when the Dohan teach, this is, you know, a topic of debate, but the Dohan have taught that the nervous system is the Sanjiao. And so when they talk about, you know, the waterways, it's talking about conductivity and how fire pairs with water. Water is a great conductor of both electricity and heat. And so this also, you know, explains a lot of things like Ming Men as this nexus between these two-dimensional animating fires.
Ming
So
Men.
this, yeah, the gate of life on the lower back L2. And so it's this conversion from Shen Shu, the kidney shu, to the Sanjiao shu. So at the level of Ming Men, we have the Shen Shu kidney shu, which converts this kidney jing, activates this chemical three-dimensional process into psychic fire, Shaoyang Qi, which, you know, we can talk about as, you know, could be an analog of Tumo or of Shakti,
Yeah,
psychic
like
fire.
internal awakened fire, internal an internal process of alchemizing one's heat in order to create change and activation within the body. So like Kundalini awakening or something like this.
Mhm, mhm, exactly.
Really interesting because when you get to this, I wasn't sure what we were going to get with the Shaoyang and the Shaoyin. So these are like, part of this whole Chinese medical thing of like dividing the body up into these six level pairs, right? There's a whole big riff around it, right?
Hmm.
And I wasn't, when you were talking about ministerial fire, I wasn't sure if we were going to talk about, I'm asking your opinion on this because you're kind of framing it in Shaoyang. I'm totally comfortable with that.
Hmm.
But not like even our TCM people, some people might be like Shaoyang. I don't always think of that as being ministerial fire. We're kind of
Yeah.
on the same page with that. But other people might say, again, this is like Chinese medical theory stuff, but
Hmm.
Shaoyin would have more to do with like the kidney and the heart, one way of talking
Hmm.
about it, right? And
Hmm.
then Shaoyang would more have to do with, as Rory was explaining, like the gallbladder channel, and then sort of this idea of the triple warmer, which are correlating also with the idea of like
Hmm.
the nervous system on some level, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some people who were Chinese medical listing might go, well, wait a minute. I remember them talking about pericardium and Jueyin being kind of a ministerial fire
Hmm.
too, right? Like in this idea that the ministerial fire of the pericardium protects the heart or something, but you're using a different framework. So,
Hmm.
can you like maybe talk about like this is gonna be for some of our TCM folks, right? This is getting like kind of deep, but would you talk a little bit about how you see the different aspects of ministerial fire and maybe how they compare to what some people might have in their mind,
Sure.
coming? Yeah.
So a lot of this cosmology is really it's not as spelled out, but you can find it in chapters 66 through 74 of the Su Wen. And so they will always call Shaoyang Qi the ministerial Qi within this section of the Yun Qi. You're never going to see Jue Yin as the ministerial fire in there. It's always Shaoyang fire as it's paired with the stems and branches too. And so from that, you know, it's basically based upon that section, Yun Qi, and that's their foundation. That's the way that they practice within Dohan.
But this particular part of the literature is like especially meaningful for them, right? This is where they feel like this is where the clearest application is.
Yeah, and that's like the core of the cosmological numerics of 5 and 6. That's where
Yeah.
stems and branches is outlined, and the whole.
Stems and branches. Rory, you mentioned it a few times, but
Mhm.
you know,
Essentially a divinations methodology, and really like a source code of reality. It's like the Taoist framework of how energy is arrayed in both space and time, and how these big gears kind of move together. And so that's another interesting thing is from this tradition, they consider fire to be time. And so since we have multiple fires, we also have multiple temporal dimensions. And so when we look at the Shaoyin fire, the imperial fire, if we look at their relevant organs, the metabolic activity of when we talk about kidneys, we also mean adrenals in Chinese medicine. And so when the adrenals dump, it's like you're moving in fast forward. It's almost like this analog time when we talk about
mm,
Shaoyin. Sorry, not Shaolin. And when the heart's super open, we have the expression "time flies." And so it's almost like rubato in music, where you have this, translates from Italian to stolen time, where you fluctuate the tempo in order to showcase emotional nuance. And so, but it's not really like time flies when your heart is super open. It's because within you, time stands still. So outside of your energetic rhythms, time is keeping its normal clip. So it's that relative perception which makes the difference. Versus when your adrenals are super pumping and like, you're waiting to hear the news on something, time's just like, but everyone else sees you as like moving very fast. But when we talk about Shaoyang, we're talking about, you know, to simplify it, but it really gets into like more, beyond just room temperature consciousness. But if we fall asleep, we don't know how much time has passed at all. Or if we go into deep meditation, we can have a feeling that time has just jumped to us. So it's almost like a digital and analog time.
So there's more of like a subjectivity in the Shaoyin time that you're referencing back, and the Shaoyang time has its sort of own more constancy to it. Is that part of the picture of that too? Or the Shaoyang time will
It's like its own,
it'll jump in its own like its own way?
yeah, its own dimension of time, really. It's almost like the phenomena of deja vu, or some people have the experience on LSD of like time loops, where they're stuck in an endless time loop. Or on DMT, the experience of time, the cycles of time being very different
very
than,
different
yeah, yeah. And so
from what
there's
I've read.
different, I've read a lot on that.
I've done, I've
And
been in the library quite a bit.
and the time is quite different. And they're also, they use this Taoist clan, they have the Dohan, they have like their meters will have like 11 and 17 in them to use these different sequences of time too. Um, but so if you look at, if you think about a little bit of Shaoyang Qi as being, if you entertain this possibility of it being like the electrical activity of your nervous system, like how much amperage are you putting out? It explains a lot of things in modern medicine that they're starting to look at too, like grip strength as a better indicator of heart health than high blood pressure, which
Hmm.
is like one of the number one killers. Or like why, like you look at in martial arts, it's always like such a mystery of why some people are such harder strikers than others. And because they call it a gift of God, but it's not the size of the speaker that that determines its volume. It's the amperage and the wattage. And so there's a lot of really interesting stuff. So in the Dohan, what we used to do, we drink a lot of soju, and then we'll either arm wrestle. And you see a lot of those videos of those arm wrestlers that are much smaller than the bodybuilders, and they'll just crank through them.
Okay.
But so we will arm wrestle, and then we'll also do finger wrestling because there's no real musculature on the fingers. So it's all just how much nerve can you fire
Oh, okay.
into that. And so that's a lot of this concept that we're, and like electricity, the stronger, current you have, the stronger magnetic field you'll have surrounding. And so a lot of like whatever we perceive in our mind has a correspondence in our nervous system. And that's a lot of what we do within our needling and all that.
Because you're an acupuncturist.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm an acupuncturist. Sorry, I'm forgetting the whole 80% thing.
No, that's all good. So, okay. I mean, I'm not going to summarize all of that because it took us a long time to get there. But then I guess I don't know, some aspects of tangibility for folks who are hearing this for the first time, whether they be Chinese medicine folks or just regular people, who find this interesting because this touches on so many different things, right? Like, again, if you're interested in psychedelics, you hear fractals, you're like, oh, I've seen those before. If
Mhm.
you are interested in like physics, you hear about like the fourth dimension or dilation of time. You're like, whoa. If you're a spiritually minded person, you're like, oh, different levels of consciousness and energy and form. And if you're a conspiracy minded person, these are our audience demographics, by the way. If you're a if you're a conspiracy minded person and you hear about like the allegory of the cave and levels of reality and seeing things as they really are versus how they might be projected onto a two-dimensional surface, knowing that there is a third and then combined with another element, a fourth dimension, right, that is existing on top of this, then if you, maybe have a meditative experience or a psychedelic experience, or even just a divine experience, you might pop up and experience another level of awareness where there's other beings or other energies there for you to interact with that are sort of like a repeating kind of cycle of what we're experiencing here. So all of these things are interesting from my kind of notes to different demographics of people, all of which is occurring simultaneously as we are recording this. And then as somebody would be listening to this, whether they be in their car or walking or whatever they're doing, this is all happening simultaneously. So you're explaining um, levels of reality that are happening simultaneously. As you're explaining them, they're also occurring, right? All the time. So now that that information has been absorbed by whoever this is listening to this, how is it that like someone would interact with this, influence their reality or themselves, or what are some kind of like, I don't know, like takeaways for some people who are intrigued by this?
Well, I guess if we want to just boil down the imperial and ministerial fires, I guess just understanding that nexus between our dimensional, multi-dimensional structure that we're in. And so the importance of like if you have an intention, you also need like your will, your jing, your zhi, your kidney jing in order to convert that. And there's actually another interesting like subs we talked about this last time. There's a like almost like a microsystem of they have different point locations too. So Sanjiao 17 is like on the mandibular nerve here. And so it's almost like a miniature Ming Men there. So kind of like when we grit our teeth, like you'll see a lot of people with adrenal fatigue, like people, if someone's on like Adderall or any amphetamine, stimulant drugs, they grind their
Ecstasy,
teeth, ecstasy. And
all
so,
the good stuff.
yeah, but, but you need both physical and mental fire
Mm,
simultaneously. You need to be able to, if you have a strong intention, your physical form also needs to be strong. And your emotions are really important. So that imperial fire, you can't just throw your emotions to the side. And it's, I see a lot of people that just are so driven and they stuff their emotions down. But if you really want to optimize your performance and what you're able to provide people with in this life, you really need to optimize your emotions. And so
Hmm.
a heartwarming story will increase your Xiaoyang fire. So it'll inspire you, it'll give you energy and all that. So making sure that you kindle this fire in the heart will benefit you, inspire you, make you more productive. It's not just hippy dippy stuff, you know. And it's also for practitioners. If there's some, that's the whole reason that the moxa is so big in the Doan clan. But their reasoning behind it is you create this little bit of objective heat with moxa, and that will convert into Xiaoyang qi. So this conversion, both the Mingmen goes both ways. Like a lot of fire can crystallize into water, and the water can be ignited into Xiaoyang. So this conversion between these different dimensional levels. So I guess like back to heaven and earth, mind and body, they go together. They're not two separate things. They're two parts of one thing.
Water and wave
Yeah.
to loop it all the way back
Yeah.
to the very beginning. That's great. That's great. I like that a lot. That's tangible is good. And also I think it, simultaneously, what you've been saying the whole time is that there's layers of reality and understanding that are existing simultaneously. And so even with something as simple as saying like body and mind have to work together, well, you can say, well, what does that mean? Oh, well, it means you should probably exercise, eat right, take care of yourself, very basic things. But it's not, we'd like to say this all the time, and as a tantric saying, it's not what you do, but how you do it. So yes, I can do the right things for what I believe to be the right reasons, but as my understanding increases, now the depth to which I can do things also deepens. And so these two
Mhm.
things are happening simultaneously. And so understanding things as they are occurring in this description allows me to be a deeper person with what it is that I'm engaging in. Whereas before I was exercising because I like big biceps. You know, but now I do still like big biceps, but I'm moving my energy around, right? I'm organizing myself to do difficult things on a regular basis, to put my mind to something and then follow it through. See myself, on a mundane level, going to the gym, execute. If I say I'm going to do 10, I do 10 or 15 or whatever the case is, right? I see that and I follow through with that, all while balancing out with what my body can do. Right. So you kind of have this thing, but you're doing it on a layered level, which is always a good reminder.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'll go a little bit different
Okay.
because I'm a fly on the wall of this conversation. I'm a late fly on the wall because you all been talking about this for a while. So just so I can frame it like, and if this is a shitty question, say, well, that's not the right question. But in terms of like an overall kind of cosmology within this thing, how is this like, we're gonna go like paint with the biggest brush, right? We have this Tao, and the Tao is going to be the source. And then how does this sort of like become the mathematics that, we go
Mhm.
yin, yang, and then we start to differentiate? How does that lay out in the sort of the system of thinking about this that you're following, Rory? Because that'll help me kind
Yeah,
of follow it through. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
get
Maybe that's
cosmology
where we
behind
should
it. Yeah.
start instead of just zooming in to the 5 and 6. But so uh, I gave someone asked me one time a similar question, and I was explaining with Tauruses, and they were like, "So what's behind the Tauruses?" And I said, "No, no, no. It's Tauruses all the way down."
That's
If
the
you're
classic
familiar,
tortoises all the way down.
yeah.
That's
So
Bertrand Russell, I think.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
you got
yeah.
it. Yeah, after a cosmology lecture.
Someone like a woman came up and like, what's the whole backstory? He's giving this lecture and the lady comes up.
Yeah, yeah. It says, well,
The whole
wonderful
thing is just on the
lecture,
back
but
of a tortoise or
yeah,
something, right?
everyone knows, the universe is suspended on like tortoise's back, or I forget if it was the earth or the universe. And he said, "Oh, really? What's the tortoise suspended on?" And she goes, "No, no, no. It's tortoises all the way down."
But they're like, don't be clever with me. Oh no, it's tortoises. Don't go clever.
Yeah. So I was
Okay,
pleased
cool.
with myself when I said, "No, no, no. It's Tauruses all the way down." And
Yeah,
so, but I mean it. So it's actually, it's so you start with the Tao.
Mhm.
And so if you zoom into you can look at just and I write this in the book. I talk about how it becomes the clan symbol is actually a double dorji. And so it's really a universal symbol. It doesn't just belong to, Taoists or this clan. But essentially what you have is you have Tao, or this central force, which you could be like the eye of the hurricane. And then the Tao Te Ching, it talks about how the Tao is empty. Is it not like a bellows? It's the empty space which gives utility in the cup. I mean, it goes on and on talking about this emptiness. And so that's really what we're talking about when we refer back once again to the microcosm of the human form. And so the universe is the same pattern, like we talked about. This macrocosm is this torus structure, is, and in mathematics too, like you probably know, so much is built upon fiber bundles and this torus topology all over. And so the universe is from this torus structure, and that's what gives us heaven and earth. And then you have the middle Dantian. So then you have seven dimensional structures. So they create actually dual toruses. And so when you look at like a Vajra,
Mhm.
it's actually representing this phenomena of like the dual toruses that you spin with the central column in the center. And so that's a big part of our practices as we meditate with these vajras. We spin them and we say our mantras, and we're connecting to that Tao, to that Chongmai force of our own bodies, which penetrates and connects all of these different dimensional levels. So that's our own individual instantiation of Tao. We all have infinity within us. There's different sets of infinity that we could talk about, though. So dual toruses at each of the seven levels, and we talked about there's first the middle Dantian, then the upper and lower Dantian, and then two more. That gives us seven. So there's seven Vajras. Each of those toruses is a yin yang. It's almost like a conservation of angular momentum. They spin the opposite ways. And so they do actually different needling patterns with the Dantian. And so we always do our, like, in the same right hand roll, chi, flowing away from you rotates clockwise, towards you counterclockwise. So needling, we do
That's like
tonific.
an electromagnetic thing. You point
Exactly.
your thumb in the way, and you'll get the other force. So electricity goes towards you. The magnetism is going to go like that away, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. And it's interesting because needles are really like little solenoids if you look at them too. Little wrapped around like that. It's kind of interesting how they are like that. Um, but so if you look at just one of these, so each of these is like a Taiji ball that's spinning, the dual torus, and the Taiji, that pure energy, the first instantiation of energy is the six chi. But there's different dimensions of these. So we're just talking about, like, you could say, like, at our heart, there's these six petals that, this is more sophisticated getting into it, but this is what it is. There's these six, they almost look like the p orbitals of electrons, is how they draw them in the Daoist clan. So you have six different lobes, and these are like,
I see what you're saying. They look like
they,
little shapes,
yeah,
like
they
yeah, like
make
a
a pair.
probability cloud or something hanging around off the.
Yeah, pure
Okay,
energy
direction. Yeah,
waveforms,
yeah.
and they make these pairs of like Tai Yin and Yang Ming, Jue Yin and Xiao Yang, Tai Yin and, I mean, Tai Yang and Xiao Yin. And then so within them, the physical form the Dohan teach is that it's projecting to a tetrahedron. So if you look at my, I don't have it in here, but if you look at my the symbol for my practice, it's a stereographic projection of a tetrahedron too. And so it makes these four hills that we call Four Mountains Clinic because it was originally in Seattle, which had mountains in the four cardinal directions. And so basically, you have this energy projecting to tetrahedrons, which are the five elements. Because once again, this when we write like the cosmological five elements, it's also a two-dimensional representation of a higher dimensional reality. So you have four vertices in the center, and so the Earth is the center, the four vertices, the other elements. And so that's what's occurring at all these different levels. And if you look at like yogic images of the chakras, they'll have triangles inside of these chakras too. It's like the same thing that's occurring. And so, and in the center, in the heart, you have the convergence of the up and down triangles. So it's the
Oh, it's the
stellated
yeah,
octahedron.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I like later these conversations. So this is always really fascinating to me. And again, if it's not the right question, but like,
Hmm.
how did this play out for you, like on a personal level? Like, you had this mathematics background.
Uh-huh.
You all of a sudden find this particular Taoist school that you're following too, and go, holy shit, look at all of this stuff that's so similar to my previous. Is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
how it played out mathematical thing? Where you're like, oh my God, is that
Yeah.
how it went?
Yeah, so I only, was in a semester of I got my undergrad in mathematical economics, and then I started doing physics, and I left physics to go study this because at the time I was learning about how all these physicists were so interested, like we talked about Niels Bohr made his family crest the after he got that Order of the Elephant award, and Oppenheimer quoted the Vedas. Tesla, you know was really in, I think he studied with Vivekananda.
The person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd have to debrand it, but okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Tesla was awesome. The dude
Yeah.
was awesome. And so I started
So you were actually studying physics. We went, you know what? Maybe I'm more interested in these more esoteric spiritual philosophies. It started to click in that way for you, or
yes, I saw
yeah.
this guy do these incredible things, take people's pulses, like unpack their entire lives. And people would ask him, "What is Taoism?" And he would say, "Taoism is multidimensional math." And I was like, "All right, well, this seems like a much more embodied way of studying this
Was this a
stuff."
Taoist doctor from China talking that way, or was that
He was
more?
from Korea, so he was the 73rd head of this Korean lineage. So it survived outside of that communist
Okay.
TCM revolution. And yeah, so he was also medically trained in Korea too. So it wasn't, I don't think if it was just Chinese medicine, don't think I would have gotten into it. It was his ability to talk in both mathematical terms and, he was spitting out like Euler's identity to me, talking about like the spin of the Dantians too, and so I was like, all right, yeah,
Did he
this.
have some massive sort of like mathematical physics background too floating around for him to see these correlates? Or how did that, did you ever get a feeling for how he developed like his whole vision of that?
I think he must have just studied some of this stuff, but he really learned the numerics really well. And this guy was, I mean, just being around him, you could feel a real different energy. And he always talked to people. Like I brought my dad to get a treatment from him. My dad was an entertainment critic for many years. And so all the analogies and parables that he was using, he was like, when Crocodile Dundee goes to the and then like the next patient he would see, he always talked to people in their language. So he didn't talk to other people in this mathematical way. Just when I would talk to him, he would speak my language. And sometimes he would even like people would come and he would address problems that they were having without them even having to voice them. And
Mhm.
so the he had some really incredible cities, really.
Mhm.
And but I think he must have been just like really interested in math too in his free time.
Also,
Because yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that must be like, an incredible moment though, like in your life to go, okay, man, my worlds are fusing now, right? Like I
Oh
have
my
the
God. Yeah.
medical thing, and now all of a sudden this, well, the medical aspect, but the psycho-spiritual aspect, or whatever phraseology you want to use behind that, the cosmological spiritual aspect, whatever, is like this was fusing for you in those moments. That's a wild time in someone's life to have those things come together.
I
And
have a photo of my first time meeting him, and just like that's gonna go in the front of the book, and I'm just so beaming in that photograph because it was like something as like a kid that I just like dreamed could be real, and it was just like my perfect thing. So yeah,
Mm,
yeah, it was a um, great moment for sure. And then I just totally went that direction. That was it.
that's cool.
yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah. Well, thanks
Because
for sharing that.
it's a different kind of vision, right? You don't always hear like things being framed in that like intense geometrical imagery in that way. That is a unique way of talking for sure, right?
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
pick up every Tao. I mean, people might be listening and like, does every Taoist talk that way? No, not necessarily. It's very
No, no.
particular vision, right?
Yeah. And so that becomes the symbol too, is that everything projects down into the middle dantian. So you have the seven like Vajras, the double dorji, it projects down. So we say like the middle dantian is our present moment. And then the upper dantians are like our future. The lower dantians is like our physical form represents our, reflects our past, like lightning and thunder. You know what I mean? And so you will never. It's very difficult to be present without the consent of the heart. Yeah,
Mm.
You can't function in the present moment, right?
yeah, yeah.
No. So when you think of like imperial fire for our TCM people, you're still putting that in the heart though, right? That's still your imperial fire, or are you seeing that
It
differently?
it animates the heart, but the whole, I mean, your whole
Some-
system
Yeah.
requires the heart in order to function. So they're all, relative of none of them exist in isolation. But
Mhm.
yes, it is I'm thinking of in that instance, I'm talking more about the middle Dantian as a dimensional level instead of because it's really a mixture of both the imperial and ministerial fire. Because you have both the heat Shaoyin and the electrical drum.
The Shaoyang being the electrical aspect. Yeah.
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 Mm.
Well, it doesn't like this is just like some shop talk about writing books, but it's not like that's a complicated book to have to write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's good.
That's
It's yeah. That's shop talk for books. I think we should wrap it.
Oh,
I
okay.
think we should wrap it.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 It doesn't mean we got
but
to
I'm
stop.
glad I got your attention on it. So
Yeah. Yeah. So, anyways, let me tell you about my process.
Well, no, I'm not even saying that. It's just not an easy thing. Like, I'm
it's not.
respecting the
Yeah.
challenge of it. We don't have to go
Oh
through it.
yeah. No.
No, let's start like, this is how I'm like organizing different chapters or whatever, but it's not, it's like, okay,
No.
that's a deep thing to try to put into a book, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a project, man.
So that's why I wanted to
Props.
talk about it as I've
Yeah.
just been spending a lot of time
Yeah.
writing.
Well, we're happy. We're happy to have. We're happy to help you be able to work through some of it here live, and with some very basic brain questions. You know what I'm saying? And but I think it's good to share this kind of thing with people, and eventually, when the book comes out, we'll have a platform of people to share it with, and people who will know you and be interested in it, so that will
Well, I'll
extend
be
your
reading
reach.
it, coming back with lots of questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's really helpful for me too to talk with people who are, practicing TCM because I'm so steeped in it's been like 11 years of just I've been, studying this stuff. So I forget how I need to be able to speak the other person's language too.
Yeah.
It's not even like the similar. I mean, this is like shop talky stuff, but it's not even similar to like the Immortals Chung and Le. Like they're not talking that way either necessarily.
Yeah.
It's a very
Yeah. And
particular vision.
nobody knows
So
what that is either.
yeah, I know, dude, but like we have talked about this before. These are other Taoist books that talk a different way.
Yes.
It's a very
Yeah.
unique Taoist vision that Rory's sharing, for people who would be listening. They don't know who those immortals are, Daniel. That's true. But there's different visions, and this is a very unique vision. So yeah,
It's true, Eric. That's a good point. It's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, that's why Rory has to continue to come on and share his vision so that it can become clearer to people who listen, whether they be the 20% who's here all the time or the 80% who sees us just now. We definitely we appreciate people tuning in and because it fuels us, to motivates us to share. And this is, the reason why I met Rory is because we have this, we have this work that we do and that we share, and that he gets to share in it with us, and that's wonderful, actually, for a multitude of reasons. So whether this is your first time or your 100,000th time listening to us, thank you for tuning in. If you're coming from any one of our particular groups of people, thanks for returning. If you're a new person, thanks for checking us out. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the things that should do. If you can subscribe, it's great. It helps us out in the algorithm to reach more people, because we do find our own message valuable. It's kind of a wide range of things that we touch on, but spirituality, social psychology, Chinese medicine, East Asian philosophy, all the ways to break all the chains of conditioning via understanding and experience is kind of like the deep level motivation for us. And any way that we can help to spread that message is just help us to keep our fires, ministerial and imperial, lit. You know what I'm saying? So Rory, thank you for joining us as always. Eric, thank you for being here. I'm glad you got to meet. Audience, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, complaints, feel free, leave a comment in the YouTube section. I do see things. Hit us up at ginandtantra@gmail.com or on the gram at the Gin and Tantra Podcast. If you want to get a hold of Rory, hit us up and we'll make sure to put you guys in contact with him, so long as you're not sending dick pics. Keep those to yourself. For Rory and Eric, this is Daniel. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.